Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, no matter where you are. Welcome to today's webinar. So, what I've learned, there are tons of videos on YouTube, on TikTok, showing cat videos, and they're very popular. But today we're going to talk not about a kitten, but about a bigger cat, about Congree's terminology management system by name of TermTiger. So I want to give you an idea how Congree TermTiger can be used to manage terminology, to do the administration of terminology, to use terminology inside of Congree in different situations. And I prepared something for you. So we basically start from scratch, and we will be talking about those main topics. So first, I'm going to show you how to configure something inside of Congree TermTiger. Then we talk about the management aspects, and then how we can share the information and the terms and the concept we have inside of TermTiger. So let's start with the configuration. So what do we want to configure? Of course, we wanted to configure a couple of fields or categories or metadata, you name it. You will see in a moment that Congree comes along with a base set of fields that are reasonable and necessary to manage terminology. But of course, you might have different ideas how you want to classify both concepts and terms inside of a terminology management system. And of course, we need to configure all the languages we want to use. I'm going to talk about views, so basically a way to customize the layout and the appearance, how terminology is being presented. We want to talk about filters. We want to be called term candidates. So basically allowing users, authors, and if you want to, everybody within an organization to help enriching the set of terminology by proposing new terms. And we wanted to see how we can apply language check inside of Congree's TermTiger as well. So I'm going to switch between PowerPoint and the actual application back and forth. I mean, this is more interesting than seeing only some slides here in PowerPoint. So let's go directly to Congree's administration tool by the name of Congree Control Center. I have logged in as a terminologist, and what I need to do obviously is to start TermTiger. And TermTiger is a web-based application running inside of Chrome in my on my machine. So inside of Congree TermTiger, we can have as many, how we call them, term bases as we need. So there might be a term base for technical information, there might be another one for sales, another one for marketing. There might be different term bases for different product lines. It basically doesn't matter. So that's one option to manage terminology. Later on, we will see that we can do something that I call a virtual term base by applying some categories and some filters. And you can see here so that I have a lot of different term bases already. But I'm not going to use an existing one because we want to start from scratch. That's what I said in the beginning. So let's go ahead and create one. I'm not Robinson Crusoe, so that's why I'm not going to call it Friday, but today is Tuesday, and let's call it this guy Tuesday. New term base inside of TermTiger. So initially, so this term base is not active. So where's my Tuesday? Let's activate this. And then let's go ahead and do what I already announced. So the first decision we want to make, which languages do we want to manage in our term base? And here in configuration, we have the option to define languages. So I'm gonna define a couple of them. We can always change that, add new ones as we need them. So let's start with German, and let's do American English, as That's fine. So that's good. For the time being, that's fine. If I need more languages at any moment in time, then I can always add new languages to my term base. So then I was mentioning the word views. And if I go now into this grid, how we call them, so we see plenty of metadata already, but I do not need them. Some of them are not relevant for this part, and it looks a bit messed up. So let's change that and go to views. And we have a couple of different views. So one is the grid that you just saw. That's what we call the managed grid. So let's start with that. And I define which group is allowed to see which pieces of information. And I'm part of the admin group. And all those categories, I'm going to talk about the categories in a second, are already selected. So the only thing that I did is to define my languages. And here I define that I want to have my definitions in those languages, and I want to see them in this managed grid. Most likely, I don't want to see an image here because they are way too big. I do not need this information here, even though it's there and it's always tracked. So who was creating a concept term, who was modifying that, when it was created, by whom it was created, etc. So let's save that. So then we have another view, and that's the edit view, how we call it. Basically the dialog allowing us to create new concepts, adding new terms, new definitions, or to modify existing concepts and terms, again, for the admin group. So all those values are already selected, but obviously we want to define the definitions here. And again, I do not need those metadata allowing me to see who did what and when and maybe why with concepts and terminology. This is just to keep it nice and clean. So that's one option. So this is now the view all members of this group have. So now they might have another idea how they want to organize the terminology and the columns we see here. Maybe it's too much for them, or they want to reorder them, and they can do so. And that's the other option. So the views define the global settings applicable to all of the users. So basically defining which pieces of information are visible and available, both in the managed grid and in the editing dialog. But I can also reorder them. So my preference is always to have the term and then the language and the usage here. But I don't want to see information about the number and the gender, because most of the time I manage English terminology, and gender is not that relevant or not relevant at all in English. So I get rid of the gender, and I don't need the German definition here. So those are my personal settings, and of course we remember them. And when I open this term base again, so then I see exactly what I have defined here. So now we are already in a situation allowing us to create new terms, and I'm going to show you two ways. One is adding terminology inside of TermTiger, and the other option is, that's what we would do in the beginning. So when we start working with TermTiger, importing existing terminology. So let's go ahead and define something new, and this is a tool to and not loss screws, no screws. And the first language I have here is German, but I don't want to define a German one, but an English one. So we define this one as screw driver, and then we make it the preferred one. We can also define a part of speech. sometimes it's important, it depends a bit on the language. So in English, in English, we could have words like check, and check can be a noun, and check can be a verb, and sometimes we want to allow or to find a noun check as the preferred one, but the verb check as deprecated one. So that's why it makes sense to provide information about a part of speech as well. And let's go ahead and add another one, the bad boy, and we call this one flat blade. So we don't want the authors to use that, and then we define this as a deprecated term. So now I could also add, if I had a picture to it, both on the concept level or on the term level. So let's save it, and here we go. So the first term is there, nicely presented. So what can we do with them now? We could filter them. That does not make any sense here, because we have only two terms. So that's why let's go ahead and import some terms to make sure that you can also see how we can import terminology that we have taken from another terminology management system, or from Excel, or from our language service provider. And to do so, we go obviously to the import dialog, select the format, and we support two formats. So one is TBX, standing for term-based exchange, and the other format is CSV, standing for comma-separated value. So a format that can be created in almost any text editor, but most likely the origin is going to be an Excel list, because Excel supports to export content as a CSV file. But this time we take TBX. So let's go ahead and select it somewhere here on my workspace. No, sorry, that was the wrong one. Let's take this one. So now the import analyzes the structures, as you know. So the categories that we have in a terminology management system and then in a TBX can be have arbitrary names, and also the values in those categories. So that was now analyzed, and then now we go ahead and import everything. So the question is, what do we do? How do we want to import them? So we want to add them to the existing term base, or we want to replace them, the existing term base. And we can also preserve the ID of a concept coming from another system. So for instance, if we want to implement a regular exchange between us and our language service provider, then it's important that we have persistent IDs to make sure that both systems understand which concept is which. Next. So about the languages, so we could now let the importer map the languages automatically. I just want to double check that. So in the TBX file, we have EN, DE of R, but I have defined the languages along with the sub-languages, which makes more sense, in my opinion, in DE, but we have never defined French, right? So that's why we can make go the lazy way and say add missing languages. So now the languages that are in my TBX file are automatically added to the term base. Fine, done. Next step, so we need to map it. So here in this column, we see the category that we find inside the TBX file. Now we need to define what those categories are inside of TermTiger. The definition is going to be a definition, and this is the definition for English, as we can tell here. So we assign the value in this category to American English. So here we have the definition for German. We assign this definition to German. Then the importer found a part of speech. So what's that? In Congree TermTiger, this is a pick list, a single, meaning we can only select one value. And this is going to be the part of speech. And there's only one in my TBX file a noun, and I map that on the value in this category inside of my term base. Then we have gender. This is going to be gender in TermTiger. So this TBX makes it really easy, mapping neuter to neuter, masculine to masculine, feminine to feminine. And the last one, the most important one when it comes to terminology management, is obviously the usage. The usage is this. So let's map those onto the values inside of TermTiger. So this is really handy because the values are the same except for the spelling. That's looking good. Next step. So now I can save this config because next time I don't want to do the mapping again. So I can save it and reuse this configuration when I import a TBX file next time. So then we go on next, start on import, and now the terminology is being imported from the TBX file into the term base. And here we go. So now it's a bit more interesting to work with this terminology. So what if I want to find certain categories quickly? Well, of course, I could use like an Excel. So the header is basically saying, show me all the deprecated terms. And then I could also say, show me all the deprecated terms in English. That was English EN. That was the mistake I made during the mapping. So that's fine, it works, but it's not very handy because I need to remember that I have set some filters here and I need to reset all the filters so we can tell where we have defined a filter because this triangle is now in a reddish color. So let's go ahead and get rid of those again, reset them, show all of them, because what's way better, that's to use filters. But before we talk about filters, I would like to introduce you to another option inside of Congree TermTiger, allowing us to define our categories. So I'm basically going to change the data model of my term base, and to be able to do so and to make sure that nobody can add new terms or import new terms, I'm going to deactivate this term base because I want to change the data module. So let's go to the fields. And I have selected term base. What's wrong here? I made something wrong. Now let's go to the filters and activate the status. Filters. And let's create one. So similar one that I just used. So let's call it deprecated in English. So basically combining the two settings that I just made in a single filter. And now we can click here and basically compose the filter that we need or the filters that we need. So that's a condition. So we want to find all terms where the usage is deprecated, and at another condition where the term language is English. Clicking on that, so then we have this filter here, and in the manage view we see this deprecated in English, and then everything is being filtered. I used the wrong language because I imported them wrongly, not as EN-US, but as EN. Let's create another one. terms without definition. So this is a simpler one, adding a condition, concept. Let's say this one in the N is blank. Save. So now again, in my manage view, I have the second filter that I can use. So now we have different types of filters. So filters allowing us to make our lives when it comes to the administration easier, because we can combine all those categories that we have. We can even use filters for categories that we do not see in the managed grid. So if you remember, I deactivated some of the categories like the creator, the modifier, the modification date, etc. But sometimes we want to filter also based on those pieces of information, and we can do that by creating an arbitrary filter. So this is a filter that we can use inside of TermTiger to manage our terminology and to create virtual views, if you will. But we can also use those filters inside of Congree to filter information based on some filters. So let's go to the Congree's Control Center. Let's create a term synchronization process exactly for this term base I've just created. Now, come on. So let's create a new one. And my recommendation is always to give the term synchronization job the same name as the term base we talk about Tuesday, so that we know which job is dealing with which term base. So let's refresh this list here, and then we have the term base I've just created. So now, if you're familiar with Congree, then you know that we need to map that. Let's quickly do this, at least for the usage, to have something that is reasonable. But now I say I don't want all terms. I don't, for whatever reasons, and this example doesn't make any sense. I'm aware of that. I just want to explain the principle. Use all the terms in the term-based Tuesday, but apply terms without definition. It does not make any sense. So it would make sense if we define new categories. So categories, for instance, so this concept or this term is the preferred one for the category department. And then we have two values like tech docs and marketing and sales, for instance. Or we have another category like product line, product family, and then we have A, B, C, and D. So we say, so this is the preferred term for A, but for product line B, the preferred term is this one, and then we would apply this category to this term. And then define a filter saying, give me all the terms, but only for product line A and tech comms, or give me all the terms for product line C and marketing. That's what I call creating virtual term bases or views on the entire set of terminology. And that makes it very handy because we can work with this or have a single bucket of all our terminology, and then using one or more categories, we can define the applicability. And this applicability or those categories can be used inside of TermTiger. That's what I already showed, to filter information, but we can also use them to filter information for certain style guides, for certain departments or product lines, or combining everything together. And it's also so everything is live. So whatever I define in TermTiger will become immediately effective in Congree's term synchronization process. So let's go back to TermTiger. Let's deactivate this filter. So this is now something that terminologists have access to, and only those. So we don't want the authors to mess up with our terminology, because there's a concept behind our terminology work. But we also want to make the terminology visible, researchable for the entire organization. And that's where another feature of Congree TermTiger comes into play that we call Congree TermTiger Search. So let's configure that, and then you will see the effect. So I was talking about the edit views, I was talking about the manage view, and here we have two others. And those are applicable for Congree TermTiger Search. So the first one is, which piece of information do we want to show any employee, any colleague in our organization? And we want them allow to access this very powerful research functionality anonymously, without having the need to have an account inside of Congree. So again, some of the values are already selected. So let's decide what we want to show them. Again, we don't want to, no, we want to show the image, but we don't want to show them those values because they do not provide any additional help to them. So this, come on, deactivate this and deactivate that and save it. So what you will see in a moment is also a configuration allowing us to define which pieces of information we want to present in the search bar. And I'm going to make it simple in the beginning, and then we change it, and then you can see the effect. So let's assume we only want to show the usage in this term base. And in a moment, I will be changing that, and then you can immediately see the effect. So let's open a new tab here. You click on TermTiger Search. So as I have a lot of different term bases, which is not typical in a real life application. So I select the term base I have just created. And now I can go ahead and search something. And the good news is I do not need to know which terms we have. And in most of the situations, we cannot know what's there. But how can we find? Well, I can just enter a, I'm sorry, an arbitrary character. So let's start with H. There's nothing in that because I made a mistake. So it's going to be 8. And this is exactly the search bar I was talking about. So I said, we want to see the term itself, and then we want to see the usage. So I can quickly modify that and say in my search bar, I also want to see the definitions for whatever reasons. Save it. So give it a refresh. Again, H. And then we have the information, if there, that we're expecting. So let's click on that. And this is exactly the information that I have defined. So we want to see the definition. We want to see all the other information regarding the gender and the part of speech, but we don't want to see who created it, who modified it, etc. So, but what if I also want to see how the terms are in the other languages? Well, then I can select them if the information is available for this kind of or for this term. So let's take something else, content competency. And if I click on this one, so then we can see, oh, this information is also available in English and in French. I would like to see those terms in those languages as well. And if I had one or more images, then I would see them here at this side. So this is called Congree Search, and the only thing that needs to be done is obviously to buy a license, but it's a flat fee, if you will. And then you can provide this URL to all colleagues in your organization, and they can use the terminology that you are mentioning inside of TermTiger to do some research and to see what has behind. So this big treasure, how I call it, a set of terminology, can now become available to all interested colleagues, people, workers within the organization. And it's all live. So whenever we do something inside of TermTiger, then this information will become effective in Congree's TermTiger search. So if you're familiar with Congree, then you know that authors can propose term candidates, but we can also allow this feature inside of Congree Search. So we select for this database, this term base, we select, it doesn't matter, select English for this rule set, and then allow anonymous users to add candidates. And if you go again to TermTiger, open it, I'm sorry. So then the all people, all workers, all employees, whoever is using TermTiger Search can go ahead and propose a new term. And what you see here is exactly what is defined in the Congree configuration for the term candidates for the rule set I have selected. A very, very neat feature helping enrich the set of terminology that we have in our organization. And of course, let's click it again. Whatever it is, so they can provide all the information. So depending on the settings, so we need to do this, we need to split, and then because those categories are defined as mandatory in my configuration, and now I can propose a candidate. And this verb is very important. Those users can only propose candidates. So as the authors can only propose terms in the Congree plugin, because we don't want them to store any term into our term base. We want to assess them. We want to decide if we want to have them. We want to discuss the proposed terms with marketing and product management, etc. And then we want to make the decision if we approve them. So then they go into our term base, or we discard them, and then they are being deleted and cannot propose anymore. So it's all well protected. So let's go to our term base. So if we do have information in our terminology database, we want to share this information. So one is inside of Congree using the term sync. I was talking about it, and there's something that you already know. So we can say, so take all the terms from the term base and attach it to the style guide. Now, or since a couple of versions, we can also say, take all the terms from the term base, but apply this filter. So that's one way of sharing this information, or making this information available and applicable in Congree's language and terminology check. So the second option is to use TermTiger Search. And the third option is to, I'm sorry, something in my throat. We need to share sometimes our set of terminology with our language service provider. So one way is to importing the terminology that we get from them. You have already seen that. And the other option is to export them. And of course, we need to export them. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with the export. Again, we can select between two formats, TBX, the most popular one, and a format that's being supported by all the terminology management systems out there, or we make it a CSV. Maybe there is only an option to CSV in some rare situations, or we want to import a CSV into an Excel file and do something with it in Excel. But I'm going to do an export as TBX. So now we can export everything that we have in our term base, so the one that we have selected here, or we define a filter. So we can now use one of the predefined filters, obviously, and we can also define a quick filter. So a quick filter that is only there during this export process. So let's define one condition, and for whatever reasons, I only want to term languages equals to German, whatever. And then I click on export, and then the export is done. Or I use, for whatever reasons, all my deprecated terms in English. But this time I don't want to apply any filter. Let's get rid of it. Export. So now the export is done. Everything is being gathered from the term base without a filter or with a filter. And then the export is available here. And to see, to show you what it does, so let's create something. Let's make a quick filter. Yeah, let's take this one and export that. So another export. And those exports are now here in this list, and you can download whenever you want them to download. That means within 24 hours. And you can see that. So this is now here the time in Germany. It's 7:36 p.m. And until tomorrow, 7:36, I can download this one. So let's hit this one. This is not spectacular. It produces a PDF. So my Google warns me because it does not recognize TBX, but I can keep it. And then I have the file exported and can do whatever I like to do them, giving it to my language service provider or do something else with it, exporting everything as CSV, opening it in Excel, or sending it to someone else. Yeah, that's an overview from 40,000 feet, if you will, to show you everything that we have in the product from start to finish. So to recap everything, create any number of term bases, define the languages that we need for this term base, defining views, some generic views, and also allowing the users to customize the user interface in accordance to their needs, filters, creating filters, defining filters, making our life and the management of terminology easier, or to use those filters in the term synchronization process inside of Congree. We can define arbitrary categories, enhancing, enriching our concepts and terminology, and of course, we can export them as they are, or applying some filters. So sometimes we do want to know who did what when, and it's a very important part of our current development. So we want to enrich the workflow options. And some of the categories that are necessary for the workflow you've already seen. I've deactivated them because I don't want to see them in my managed grid. I don't want to see them in my edit view, but they're still there. So at the moment, everything is being tracked, not exposed in the user interface. So that's what I've prepared here, another URL, at the moment providing me a list of all the things that happened in my term base and when. So basically all the information that you have seen, who did what, when, on which level, etc. Yeah, so as I said, this is an overview from 40,000 feet. So now I'm more than happy to answer your questions. So you're all on mute, so feel free to use the question sections here inside of GoToWebinar. So the first question is there any limitation regarding the languages? Maybe, I'm not aware of that. So let me see which languages we have at the moment in the product. That makes probably more sense. Let's go to the languages and then open this list. So yeah, a lot. So not only languages that can be represented in an ASCII code or in Unicode 8, but also in Unicode 16. So at the moment, and so far, I'm not aware of any limitations or any feedback from customers that they were missing a language. So is the number of term bases inside of TermTiger limited? I'm not aware of that. Maybe there's a limitation, but this limitation is definitely very, very high. And I mean very, very high. And I cannot think of any situation where we would need so many term bases. So even in my case, because I was playing around with some applications and data, etc., I have plenty of them. It's an option to have so many databases, but I would always prepare to use a single database and then define additional categories, allowing to differentiate different terms depending on their applicability. And applicability could be, as I said, product line, product family, department, customer. Because in some situations, we have customers where the terminology is defined by their customers, and then they want to differentiate term depending on the customer they create the information for. So let me see if there is another language. So is the number of categories limited? No, it's not. So the data fields that we have are, you saw a couple of them, text, plain text, so a single line, text multiple, so basically a text with line breaks, then two types of pick list, so one allowing a single selection and another one a multiple selection, and then we have image, and then those categories that we need for a good terminology management, so like usage and gender and number, and nodes and definitions, etc. So not the sky is the limit, but your requirements are the limit. So when we create a new term base, and you saw that, then we have a reasonable set of categories already available, which are in most situations sufficient, but whatever you need to do to make your administration task easier or to filter information for the different style guides inside of Congree, your fantasy or your requirements are the limits, but not. There's no technical limitation. Yeah, is Congree TermTiger part of the product? It depends. It depends. So we have a couple of backends inside the product supporting cross-term and multi-term, term web, quick term. Some of our customers said, no, we are happy with TermTiger. It's a full-blown terminology management system, and if they license our terminology component, they can use whatever backend they need. So it could be QuickTerm. If you don't have QuickTerm, they go for TermTiger, then they can use TermTiger. Is TermTiger Search a separate license? Yes, it is. It's a separate license, but it's not a license based on the number of users. As I said, it's a flat rate. You license this component, and then, I don't know, might be a company having 50 employees, they can use it, or 50,000 employees. The price and the license fee is the same. So can we get a demo with our data? Yeah, of course you can. You can. If you're interested in TermTiger or Congree in general, so then reach out to us and send us your terminology, ideally as a TBX file, and then we can see how your terminology behaves inside of Congree's TermTiger. So having said that, if you want to learn more about Congree, not only about the terminology management system, the terminology management inside of Congree, feel free to contact us. My colleagues in sales, we are more than happy to do a demo for you and show you how this terminology works inside your editing environment. And that's the big idea. So we do not terminology to have a terminology management system. So initially, terminology management systems were invented, if that's the wrong word, to support the quality of the translations, to provide the translators with the information they need to make a correct and consistent translation. But with Congree, we can support the content creation process by pushing all the relevant information that an author needs into the editing environment, showing them, oh, sorry, no, we don't want you to use the word flat blade, please use screwdriver. And also by providing information, as you know, or those know that are familiar with Congree, that we have a terminology research where the Congree plugin does the research for us. So whenever we detect a deprecated or admitted term, so then we push the information into the editor saying, so look, this is the definition for this, and this is how we want you to use that. So there's no need for the authors to jump into the terminology management system, because most of the time they don't even know that there's something, they do not know how to get there, they do not know how to work with it. And most likely they don't have a license to do that, but this information is part of the Congree's plugin, or if Congree's TermTiger search was licensed, so then it's generally available within the organization. So that was the last question I see here. So thank you very much indeed for your time and for your interest. Have a good morning, a good afternoon, or a great evening, and I hope to talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.